Hi everyone, welcome back to our philosophy of happiness class. For this week, we'll work on some of the Eastern philosophers on well-being and happiness. So before I start, I'll give a quick roadmap about this week. So this week, I'll cut a whole lecture into three shorter lectures, and they will be on Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. So this first lecture will be on Confucianism. I'll firstly talk about several features of Confucianism. Then I will talk about two specific, very classic Confucian thinkers, Mencius and Xunzi. I'll also compare and contrast them a little bit. That will be for this first lecture. So let's get started with some Confucianism. So firstly, let's talk about Confucianism as this general idea, this general doctrine, because there have been hundreds of Confucian philosophers over the years who have tried to study or develop Confucius work. So it has changed a lot, and there have been many different ways of doing Confucianism. So, and each Confucian thinker or philosopher would differ from each other. So I wanted to talk about this general doctrine and its features first. Oh, in fact, when I'm doing this lecture, I'm actually somewhere 2 hours drive away from where Confucius was born. So it's kind of interesting to do this lecture here. So the most important feature of Confucianism is that it gives virtue a prominent place. The most privileged place was given to virtue. Confucianists think that virtue constitutes well-being and is inseparable from human flourishing. So if you want to live a life of well-being, and if you want to create a society where people can live with happiness and well-being, you have to live virtually, and you have to rule your citizens, or you have to create a society where virtue plays an important and guiding role in your picture of your society or political structure. The second feature is that Confucianism gives a lot of weight to the practical side of life, to the practical wisdom we need in life. So there has always been this strong practical orientation underlying their work. So they always try to give practical insights of how we might cultivate our own virtues, or how we might fulfill our own lives as humans and flourish. So they always try to give these practical, tangible suggestions that are grounded in everyday lives. So there is this groundedness to the theories of Confucianism. The third feature is that Confucianism tracks the developmental aspect of the good life very well. So for Confucianists, well-being is not this single destination, this single stage. To have well-being, you have to go through these series of stages that form a trajectory, that form a process. And this process has to point towards somewhere. Frequently, this destination points towards a kind of sagehood. You would become the sage at the end of this process or this trajectory, but you have to go through each of the stages. You have to develop as a human and go through these stages. So there is this developmental aspect, the sense of these stages forming this process together, and this process has to point towards somewhere. So this sense of pointing towards somewhere. And also contextualism. So Confucianism is a very contextualist philosophy. So what does contextualism mean? So it means that we do not view humans simply as isolated beings that are detached from each other, that are not impacted by other humans or beings or their environment. Philosophers who agree with contextualism argue that humans are partially constituted by their relationships, their family, their countries, their environments, their society. So, in other words, humans are not only themselves. Some parts of their beings are relational and are defined by relations. So if you want to look at a human, if you want to look at how a person might flourish, you can't just look at this person themselves. You have to look at what kind of relationship this person is having. You have to look at what kind of environments or relationships surround this person. And you have to think about what kind of environment we are creating for this person. So there is and I think Confucianism puts this great emphasis, especially on the idea of family. So the family is this very important idea to Confucians. So another important feature of Confucianism is related to this idea of benevolence in its teachings. So Confucianism isn't just a theory of well-being or a philosophy of how we should live. It also tries to propose its own metaphysics, its own ethics, as well as social and political philosophy. And this idea of benevolence can be seen and realized throughout all different aspects of Confucianism. But I feel like it's especially important in the political philosophy. Back around Confucius' time, there was this period of time in ancient China called the dynasty of Qin. Some of you might have heard of this. So back then, there was a lot of coercion, there was some punishments to reinforce the strict orders made by the political authorities back then. So the society was extremely strictly ordered, and if you think about that kind of context where there is a huge amount of coercion and punishments, and which are pretty harsh and strict, and where there were chaos and darkness, you might be able to see that how important it is that people like Confucius try to build in benevolence in their political philosophy. So Confucian thinkers, especially Confucius himself, they try to see humans not as subjects that you have to watch and punish so that they can follow what you want them to do. They see humans as those alive beings that are related to each other. They are beings that you need to educate, influence, and teach and transform instead of punishing or watching. So Confucian thinkers argue that political authorities should not focus on punishing and coercing. They need to be virtuous themselves. They need to be good examples for their people. And political authorities have to foster those environments where people can live with well-being, where people can be educated and transformed, where people can be given or put on the suitable positions so that they can live a life of well-being, where they can connect to each other in appropriate ways, where they can receive the education they need. So Confucianism sees that, and they recognize the kind of dignity that humans have. They recognize that it's always more important to educate instead of punish. And they see people as real alive beings that you need to love and you need to care about their well-being, and you need to be kind, and have that kindness and benevolence in your mind when you think about what kind of policies you're making, what kind of laws you're making, what kind of society you want to create for them so you can live better. So that idea seems to be very important. If you think about the kind of historical context back then, although Confucius' time was before the Qing dynasty, but I felt like Confucius' idea, or this idea of Confucianism's importance, was demonstrated pretty well in that period of time, in that particular historical context of the dynasty of Qing. So I want to talk about this idea of benevolence because this is what personally made a lot of sense to me. And it helped me to understand Confucianism and why it was given such an important place in Chinese philosophy, in East Asian philosophy. And also I wanted to talk about this as well. So Confucianism, and also the two Confucian thinkers we are talking about in this lecture. So I wanted to highlight that they are not just proposing a theory of well-being for individuals. They are also having political purposes and ideals underlying their theories. So they are not just answering how can a single person be happy and well, what can we do to live happily, what kind of person should we be, what kind of lives should we live. So they're not just answering that kind of questions, but they are also trying to answer the question that how can we create a society where everyone lives with happiness and well-being. So they are also thinking about this on a whole societal level. They're thinking about this whole political ideal where everyone can live with well-being. So we have to create an environment like that for people. So there is this political kind of purpose or ideal there. Like what I just said, Confucius' theory is not just a theory of well-being or ethics. It also has its own special metaphysics. But I'll skip that for now, maybe. So maybe I should talk about the way in Confucius philosophy, because that's a very important idea for them. But that's not just like an ethical truth, or this idea of the way is not just relevant to ethics, it's also relevant to the metaphysics. So in Confucian philosophy and metaphysics, the way is the fundamental view of the world. So it thinks about the question of the ultimate meaning of human existence. The way contains not only the morals that should be followed for living in the real world, it also is metaphysical. So it also captures this idea of an ultimate truth and an ultimate wisdom. And sage and sense would know this Dao, or the way, and virtuous persons would know this. And so the way not only is this ultimate moral or guidance that we should follow when we live in the real world, is also metaphysical and ultimate in other sense. So there are two senses to the way. One is kind of ethical and more relevant to our daily lives, and the other is more metaphysical. It talks about the fundamental laws of the universe and talks about what's ultimate. So it's basically unifying the metaphysics and ethics. So you would see people using the way in Mencius or Xunzi or other Confucian philosophies. So I want to highlight that it's not just this ethical principle, or not this moral in terms of ethics. It also has this foundational metaphysical side that tracks how the world is, and in this over and beyond way. And also I wanted to talk about that in Confucianist philosophy, it's very important to keep in mind that this is a long tradition. There have been many developments since Confucius himself. In fact, a lot of the Confucian philosophy changed quite a bit throughout history. And there are still a lot of Confucian scholars today who are trying to apply Confucianism to the world today, or they try to reinterpret some of Confucian's ideas, or compare and combine those with other philosophers, like some more modern philosophers, or with a specific political theory they have in mind. So I just wanted to highlight that Confucianism is this whole group where a lot of theories and philosophies and works can fall into, so that we can't just see them all as the same. But here are some common features that they might have. Also, specific versions of Confucianist work might reject some of these features as well. But that is not what we can cover in this class. So let's talk about Mencius. So firstly, the most important feature of, and most famous feature of Mencius' philosophy is that he thinks human nature is essentially good. And he gives this robust teleological conception of human nature. So I'll explain a little bit more of this. So he argues that we have things called duan in our mentality, or in our nature. So those duan are dispositional traits or sprouts. They are innate capacity for certain moral feelings that can be cultivated into full-blown virtues. So in a more simple way, basically there are seeds of virtues in our nature, and Mencius thinks that these kind of seeds for virtues make us uniquely human, and if you are a human, then you would have these seeds or sprouts of good virtues. So you can just imagine barley seeds or any kind of seeds, flower seeds. So basically, if you are a human, you would have such seeds that can grow into full-blown virtue in your nature, no matter where you live, no matter what you've gone through, no matter how you are now, or what kind of environments you are in. And there are 4 basic feelings or sensibilities, so 4 seeds or sprouts that can be growing into or cultivated into 4 virtues. So the seed of compassion can be grown into, so the seed of benevolence is compassion. So compassion as a seed can be grown into benevolence. The seed of righteousness is disdain. So disdain as a seed can be grown into righteousness. Difference as a seed can be grown into propriety, and approval or disapproval as a seed can be grown into wisdom. So there are different challenges to these. So for instance, so maybe people have several psychiatric disorders, such as sociopath or other psychiatric disorders, that they might not feel some of these emotions or feelings or sensibilities. Can you just exclude them from this group of humans? That's not right. That seems not right. And also, different cultures or people who lived in different environments might have, or spoke different language, might not formulate these feelings we have exactly this way, or they might not have some of these feelings because of the culture they live in or because of the language they have. So for those people who adopt a relativist idea about ethics, they might disagree with Mencius. Or for people who have neurodiversity, they might not feel the emotions or formulate the emotions exactly the same way as neurotypicals. And maybe their pictures of the world, maybe their four C's would they would want to formulate their own sprouts or seeds differently from how Mencius does this. So there are a lot of new perspectives we can bring to Mencius theory, and we might challenge Mencius theory in a lot of different ways. And as some of you might feel, Mencius theory might lead us to a lot of unfair conclusions about certain groups of people. So that is a challenge I want to present, and I'm also curious about your thoughts regarding this theory. So Mencius also adopts this very famous metaphor, this agricultural metaphor, and that he argues that like sprouts and seeds, if you want to grow them into all sorts of plants and things, you have to grow them in the right conditions. They need soil, rain, light, and human effort. This is the same for humans, that if we want our seeds of compassion and whatever to grow in benevolence and all the virtues we want, we need to put people in the right environment. We need to put people in the right place. We need to give them what they need. We need to make efforts, suitable, appropriate, good efforts to make people, the seeds in their nature, grow into the right things. So again, Mencius theory is pretty developmental. Also, Mencius accepts that pleasure and satisfaction of our basic desires can lead to happiness. So his philosophy is not stoic. He thinks that non-moral desires play a role in having well-being, but they have to be rightly ordered. Although virtues always have this deeper, more fulfilling joy for us. So he gives a more prominent, a more privileged place to the kind of joy and well-being virtues can give us. So for Mencius, a happy person would look like this person with deep serenity. This person would be virtuous. They're sure about their future. They have a lot of joy. They are always in this positive psychological state. And this happy person would always live according to virtues while also fulfilling their own non-moral desires in the rightly ordered way. And how can we become this person, this happy person in Mencius philosophy? So we have to go through these different stages. We have to create the right environments for ourselves, and the political authorities have to create the right environments for us so that the seeds in our hearts, in our nature, would grow into the beautiful virtues, so that we would go through these different stages of cultivating it as similar to how you would cultivate your seeds in the gardens into fully blown plants. And we need to go through this process, go through these stages of growth with the right environments, with the right efforts of cultivation. And essentially like how seeds grow into fully blown plants, we grow into these stages, we grow into these virtuous, wise persons. And that's how we reach well-being. So all we need to do is to be in the right environments and cultivate our own seeds of virtues in our nature to bring out the good nature in our human nature. So that's how we can become happy persons and Mencius work. But Xunzi, that's different. Confucian philosopher, he disagrees a lot with Mencius. So Xunzi argues that human nature is bad. Human nature doesn't have any good seeds of virtues in it. It only consists of disordered, self-absorbed tendencies. So a lot of people say that it's because around Xunzi's time, those Confucian philosophers and thinkers back then got suppressed, and there have been harsh things done to the Confucian thinkers around Xunzi's time. That's probably, some people argued and interpreted that probably this partially affected Xunzi, or influenced Xunzi's philosophical work, and made him think that human nature is essentially bad. So some people said that this might be partly Xunzi's responses to the kind of environment and social context and historical context he lived in. But anyways, Xunzi argues that if we want to develop virtues, it won't work if we just try to draw out our natural tendencies. If we try to bring out the good seeds in our nature, it won't work if we try to build upon our nature, because you can't really make anything work within there. There are no good seeds in the nature, so you can't really cultivate anything if you are just working on the from the inside. Instead, he argues that we need to impose on our nature from outside. So Xunzi gives this famous craft metaphor. So Xunzi argues that when we craft a knife, within metal there is no principle of being a good knife. The piece of metal doesn't know anything about a knife. And a piece of metal will never become a knife on its own. So we need to craft it from outside. We as crafters have to impose the principles of making a good knife. But that's in our head, that's not in the metal. And we need to impose these principles on the knives. We have to craft the knives from the outside. We need to change it from the outside. So that's what Xunzi thinks. So Xunzi thinks this is the same with our human nature, that we have to work on the human nature from outside. We have to acquire the principles of being a virtuous person from outside our nature, and we impose those principles on our nature from outside, and we work from the outside. So that's what Xunzi thinks. So Xunzi therefore focuses on culture, the role of teachers, rituals, and traditions. Xunzi thinks that we need to use these to reform our nature. We need to use these to craft our nature, like how we craft that piece of metal into knives. We have to go through this process of reformation through practice of rituals and under the guidance of teachers and good teachers. So ritual, as I have mentioned this in this lecture, rituals contain several different things. So it refers to different religious practices. It also refers to certain manners we need to have, certain social rules or social manners or expectations of how we should behave in social contexts. It also has certain ethical principles you need to have, like you need to respect your teachers and your parents and your emperors and political authorities, that kind of stuff. So there are also ethical principles within the idea of ritual. So it's an idea that combines several different things. And for Xunzi, to be a person of well-being and virtue, we go from this uncultivated state, and then we become gentlemen. Now those gentlemen, okay, they translated this word as gentleman. That is partially limited to the kind of historical context they lived back in. Back in the days, but gentleman is not limited to male, and human beings can be gentlemen. In fact, I think this is a very bad bad translation of the idea. And although the original work by Xunzi, they probably weren't aware of feminism as much as we do today, which I totally disagree with. So I think I personally find problems with this word and this translation, and I really think one project we should do with Confucianism is to reinterpret this idea of the so-called gentleman and use different words to talk about this idea. So just so you're aware of why this is there. So not only a man can be gentlemen, so people who have any genders, or people who are not non-binary, we can all be the so-called gentleman, or this virtuous, wise person. So so we go into this stage of life where we are virtuous, wise, and still carry impulses that need to be tamed. So this is this secondary stage, and then we keep crafting and reforming our human nature, and we reach the final stage where we are in complete sagehood. So for Xunzi, a happy person would be a sage. This happy person would be in a stage of non-striving. So it means that this person would be in a mode of unforced and natural behaviors. Everything is natural. But then these natural behaviors would be adorned with emotional fulfillment and joy. This person is just morally perfected and behave whatever they want. But yet, this sage just think freely and do whatever they want, but yet their desires, emotions, and thoughts just naturally always track the good and the way, the Dao. The way, the Dao, as I explained in the start of this lecture, the kind of metaphysical ultimate truth and wisdom of life, this also a permanent ultimate ethical moral of how we should live our life. So the sage just doesn't need you don't need to do any work on this person anymore, and you can just let this person do whatever they want, and they will just, no matter what they think or desire, this just will always fall under the good and the way. So this person just can't do any evil things, or just can't live in unwise ways. So this is this image of the sage, the complete sage. And I think this idea of sage actually is seen, or is pretty important, or in the ideals of a range of different Confucian philosophers as well. So I think Mencius himself also has this the idea of this perfect sage in his mind, as well as Confucius. So to Xunzi, a happy person is a sage, and we achieve the ultimate form of well-being through becoming a sage, and through going through these stages and processes of reformation. So since Xunzi focuses a lot on the external forces and how they craft our human natures for us, so it's not surprising that he also carries these political messages and ideals in his work. So Xunzi is aware that social environments can affect our thoughts and behaviors a lot. So he thinks that a very important thing, if not the most important thing, is also that we need to create the environment that make people flourish. So he envisions this well-functioning, harmonious society where everyone is at the right place, the appropriate place for themselves. Everyone fulfills their moral obligations and rituals attached to their particular positions, and a very well-ordered society. But there have also been challenges to Xunzi's political ideal. For instance, could it be unjust And if we talk about that certain people only belong to certain particular positions, so if I am at this place where, at this lower place in the social hierarchy, and Xunzi is making arguments about me, saying that this is where I should be and I should just be here and fulfill the moral obligations attached to this lower position. Is that fair for me? Who decides that for me? Why do they get to decide, not me? And how about social hierarchy? Is it fair to reinforce this strict idea of social hierarchy? Is this fair to create or reinforce or build in these ideas of social distinctions in our philosophy? I think all the philosophers, all the Confucian philosophers who share a similar ideals of a well-ordered society, we naturally arrive at similar challenges regarding whether the kind of orders they are proposing or envisioning are fair, and whether they can reinforce social hierarchies and distinctions that we don't want, that are unjust. So people have also been challenging Xunzi's work from these sides as well. So do you agree with this idea? If you have some thoughts about this, so I would love to hear about them more in the discussion spaces. And although Xunzi and Mencius disagree a lot regarding whether human nature is essentially good or bad, I think they share some similarities as well. So firstly, they share the similar idea of sagehood, and they both envision a well-ordered society. So I didn't talk about this enough when we were talking about Mencius, but as you might perceive or imagine from reading Mencius' work, he also cares a lot about the environments we are in. So he thinks that to grow the seeds of virtue in our nature, we need the right environments and conditions to grow them properly. So Mencius also worries and is concerned about a well-ordered society where can best bring out the good nature in us, that can best grow the seeds of virtues in our nature. And they also both share this teleological conceptions of well-being, that our lives are not destinations. Our lives have to consist in different stages, and that our lives have to point towards somewhere, and that final destination, the final direction is to become this complete sage, to attain this complete sagehood, and that our lives have to have meaning in this way, that it points towards being a sage. So that's all for the Confucianism class. See you in the other two lectures. Thank you so much. Let me know more about your thoughts in the discussion spaces.